Thank you, Monsieur. I believe that everybody can hear me. If not, let me know through the chat. I will try to share my screen. Yes, let's see if I can share my screen. Can you see the presentation? Just 1 minute. Okay. Now I can see that what I'm sharing, it's okay?
Yes. Now it's okay.
Okay, great. So what I brought for all of you today is a similar presentation that we have already given in a seminar for science, on science diplomacy that we had on June. And what I will focus is about some reflections on science diplomacy from the practice that we have with collaboration with our embassy with the European Union and from the liaison office. So basically for this presentation we used the theoretical framework of two. One of the S4D4C, which Elke will talk about a lot, and the new frontiers of science diplomacy. That's the definition of science diplomacy that we have. And this definition has three dimensions: science in diplomacy, science for science, diplomacy for science, and science for diplomacy. So in this sense, I also brought some examples from the Argentinian cooperation. For example, in the case of science in diplomacy, we refer about evidence-based in policy, and that's the role of science and technology play in providing truthful data and information to serve as input in the foreign policymakers, such as, I don't know, geologists and oceanographers at COPLA, or the climatologists in the delegations that now are in the COP, for example. In the case of science for diplomacy, that's the role of foreign policy that plays in facilitating international cooperation. In the case of Argentina, here we found the agreement that we have, the deep experimental black water that we are currently building with Chile. And in the case of science for diplomacy, that's the role that science and technology play in opening and maintaining open channels for dialogue and collaboration when other options are political or hindering. Here, for example, I was very interested on listening to the presentations of Fernando and Pedro, because actually Argentina has the national law of the law RAICES, that is the network of scientifics living abroad, for example. Here it's only mentioned the scientifics, the Argentinians living in the United Kingdom, but I was wondering if we could see some of the innovation diplomacy that you do with the diaspora. That's why the reason for my question, because actually Argentina has the Argentinian diaspora very well mapped through the law, and we have some actions that we do with them, but it's always interesting to see how we can do new things through the innovative point of view, because what we do, for example, is basically connect the diaspora with the Argentinian researchers and maybe do some collaborative projects, but in the innovation point of view, we haven't done anything so far. So, since we are now framed on the focus partner, the EULAC-FOCUS project, and the Secretariat of Government, which I'm part of, is a partner in the EULAC-FOCUS project, I wanted to focus my presentation on the political dialogue, in particular the bilateral dialogue, that means the Argentina with the European Union, and the bi-regional dialogue, that's the case of the CELAC and the European Union. So, in the case of the bilateral dialogue, Argentina was the first country in Latin America to sign an STI cooperation agreement in 1999, and we celebrate this year our 20th anniversary of cooperation between Argentina and the EU in science and technology. In fact, we had our steering committee meeting in June this year. The agreement has allowed us to do a lot of actions and a lot of collaboration and cooperation with the European Union, and in particular it has also allowed us to structure a liaison office, that is the area where I work in the Ministry of Science, and it has allowed us to boost the cooperation and to boost the internationalization of research groups. In the case of the political dialogue, but that is in the Latin American side, I brought this slide in particular to show the different levels that this dialogue has. I believe that Ramon has mentioned briefly something in this case, but I wanted to take a few minutes on discussing this in particular. In the case, the highest level of the dialogue is the summit of EULAC, or the summit. It has been a while since this summit takes place, but nonetheless, in the particular of science and technology is important for both regions, since we have joint declaration and action plans, and in particular, after the Madrid summit, it has a particular chapter on science and technology. This led us to the institutionalization of some channels, some institutional channels, which are the senior officials meeting. In the slide, you may find that they are all listed there, and biannual work plans that led us to the possibility also to have projects that implement different actions. In particular, for example, the Alquenet project, EULAC Health, ERANET-LAC, and now we have one in personalized medicine. EULAC-FOCUS is also one example that the cooperation is boosted, and we have these small actions. Well, they're not small, but I mean, we have like this project that allow us to identify areas of cooperation and to keep boosting it and to feed into senior official meetings in order to have our cooperation and our collaboration in agenda. So as I was saying, the bi-regional dialogue has a chapter specifically in the case of the summits that has specific reference to science, research, innovation, and technology, and led us to the creation and the implementation of, first, a joint initiative on research and innovation, which is the GRI, and afterwards, on 2016, with the adoption of a common research area, which led us also to continue working through different and thematic working groups in different areas that are identified by both regions. In addition to this, the newest two groups that were created were one in infrastructure in 2018 and 2019, and a task force on sustainable urbanization in 2018. So I promised I was going to be very brief, basically because I also wanted to see the interactions between you. So what we have found after the practice of science diplomacy is that we have, for one side, a discursive way, and for others, an action, a way of action. So the science diplomacy has the problem of the challenge that we have to build a common language between diplomats and scientists, and even between diplomats and other areas of the government, such as myself, for example. We have different languages and we have different way of seeing public policy, so we need to always find a way on how to boost cooperation and how to better connect ourselves. This is also related to the different bureaucracies that both ministries have. In the case of the Ministry of Science, it's not the same bureaucracy and it's not the same way of working like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also the schemes that we have on cooperation. Multilateral cooperation, such as bi-regional cooperation, is not the same as bilateral cooperation, where even if the interests tend to be similar, we promote different types and we have different levels of dialogue. And Argentina, for example, when we have to cooperate, when we have to dialogue directly with the Commission, we do our joint steering committee meeting. When we have to do the bi-regional dialogue, we usually first get together and previously on talking to the Commission, we have our intra-regional dialogue. So, these are related to what is the concept for science diplomacy and the definition. Are there national dimensions on the science diplomacy, or should we think as a EULAC-FOCUS project, or as an input of the EULAC-FOCUS project of maybe bi-regional dimensions? That would be all from me. I hope you have heard me, because actually I put a presentation on, and I lost track of the screen.